Let's take a look at how the Ryzen 7 7840U processor with Radeon 7800M graphics tackles some of the latest and most demanding games, capped at a 25-watt TDP. Plenty of handhelds to choose from to get the job done, but this is the hardware we're going to use to do it. The OneXPlayer 2 Pro, 8.4-inch 2560 by 1600 screen, 60Hz only though. Ryzen 7 7840U, which is to all intents and purposes identical to the Legion Go's Z1 Extreme. 32 gigs of memory this time. This one's even chunkier than the Legion Go, a proper chonker you might say, housing a 65.5 watt-hour battery. I want to start with Alan Wake 2 actually, as it's ultra demanding on GPU but very light on CPU, and settings wise I went with the PlayStation 5's performance mode preset mapped into the PC settings. Essentially the low preset with medium textures and medium scattered object density. My aim was to hit a minimum of 30 frames per second. A locked 30 frames per second would be nice, but unfortunately there's no half-rate VSync option in Alan Wake 2, and I've yet to find a Windows handheld that has a decent inbuilt 30 FPS limit with proper frame pacing. Anyway, for fun, here's how the OneXPlayer with 7840U at 25 watts stacks up against the PS5 on the same settings, the difference being resolution of course. We're at 1440p FSR2 balance mode on the PS5, 720p with various FSR presets on the handheld. Interesting to note that vastly different internal resolutions are not making that much difference. We're not CPU limited, so I expect something quite different is the bottleneck there. Still, 720p FSR2 balance mode on the handheld has 54% of the performance of the PS5 version in 1440p FSR2 balance mode. However, switching PS5 to its quality mode, which is essentially PC on medium, offers up closer performance. 2160p FSR2 balance mode on PS5 with the higher settings is just 4% faster than handheld 720p balance mode, with the performance mode preset settings engaged. And that's an equitable compromise overall, I think, for a handheld experience. There's a reason why we choose this area for stress testing. It's really hard on the GPU, and the majority of gameplay isn't quite that intense. Most gameplay in the taxing forest area is actually in the mid-30s, even when foliage and overall scene density is very high. Yes, Alan Wake 2 does play nicely on a handheld, and it still looks awesome. And in actual fact, moving into the town of Bright Falls itself, where density and foliage is significantly reduced, performance is significantly higher. We're into 40 FPS territory here. So interesting stuff here overall, and in actual fact we're operating on quality settings that are slightly higher than the Xbox Series S version of the game, resolution targets aside. But yeah, still in very similar shape in performance terms to the Series S experience. It would be possible to achieve 30 FPS with consistent frame pacing, but not via any of the frame rate limiters available to any of the handhelds. We'd need to be installing and looking at Chaldean's Special K to get the job done. But really, Remedy should be sorting this. It would be very beneficial to the PC version in general, especially running on older hardware like, say, NVIDIA Pascal-based GPUs. Next up, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, which does have a half refresh rate VSync, which does properly respect consistent frame pacing. It can be done, and there are DirectX system calls to do it. We just need to see developers support them, as we're seeing here. The game plays out well, and even on lowest of the low settings, it still looks pretty phenomenal on a handheld, I've got to say. However, one thing worth pointing out is that regardless of output resolution, Avatar operates at an absolute minimum of 720p native. I'm using TAA here instead of FSR2, as even if you set up FSR2 with performance mode or quality mode or whatever, the base resolution will always be 720p. So it's best to turn off upscaling reconstruction altogether, stick to TAA and reap an actual increase in performance from doing so. I mean, I would have liked to have matched PS5 performance mode settings here, but you need upscaling to do so. And that's just not viable at 720p. Reflection quality on water surfaces isn't great, and you're missing a lot of the micro detail that looks so awesome in this game. But on the handheld screen and with the reduced 720p resolution, you don't actually feel as though you're missing that much. Avatar still looks great and runs really well, really consistently, with only minor frame rate wobbles. It would be nice to see the lower bounds on native resolution lowered to better support handheld play, and maybe even bring Steam Deck into contention. But in a game with this level of density and the sheer amount of transparencies in play, I do wonder how well FSR2 would hold up anyway. In the meantime though, Z1 Extreme and 7840U class hardware can run this genuinely next generation game, and while the compromises are pronounced, they're far less impactful when playing on a smaller screen. It's pretty awesome to see this running at all, actually, I'd say. And you could say the same for Horizon Forbidden West, the Burning Shores DLC here. Running this here at 720p resolution with half-rate VSync, capping us to 30 frames per second. I'm using dynamic resolution scaling in combination with XeSS machine learning based upscaling. However, I have swapped in the new 1.3 version of the XeSS DLL, replacing the existing DLL in the game install folder. 1.3 resolves better image quality, particularly egregious with particle ghosting on the stock version of XeSS the game ships with. Settings-wise, we don't need to be running at the absolute minimums either, far from it. I'm using the medium setting by and large and letting dynamic resolution scaling do the heavy lifting. You can actually run a lot of the content at higher resolutions on the same settings, even 1080p, but dynamic resolution scaling doesn't cover all eventualities, and once you hit the Burning Shores content specifically, performance buckles, hence the drop here to 720p, which effectively solves almost all of the GPU related limitations. I say most because the core game itself still has problems that need addressing. The most obvious one being the stuttering performance found in the more demanding cinematics, as you can see here in the Burning Shores main introduction. Gameplay runs just fine though, even in combat, even with a lot of GPU intensive effects work in play. But that's it for now. Like, subscribe, share if you enjoyed the content, and ring the little bell icon for notifications that will hopefully lead you to brand new DF videos. And of course, the DF supporter program. Join us to gain access to our amazing community, DF Direct privileges, early access and high quality video downloads of everything we do, and indeed everything we have done since 2016. And yes, if you fancy turning yourself into a walking advert for Digital Foundry, go to store.digitalfoundry.net to check out our various merchandising wares. But that's all from me on this one. Thanks for watching and supporting Digital Foundry.